There we are. Okay. So I'll just go over servlets a little bit, and if you find anything additional information you want to add or something that I say wrong, feel free to butt in there, Robbie. Okay. Um. So Jared and whoever else may watch this, um, servlets is kind of like in simple terms, is kind of like a little middleman. It's like a program that's used often with web servers. And so your browser, of course, communicates with the web server. And instead of the server responding itself with the request or the response, it uses a servlet, and the servlet will go sometimes use a database or get information and formulates the customized response and has the response sent back instead using the servlet. Um, One of the advantages is it kind of gives you a layer between the server's front end and the database. Another advantage is that your servlet, at least the Java servlets, utilize multi-threading, and so for every request, it'll actually spawn off a instance of the servlet to handle that request. Is that about what you understood there, Robbie?
Exactly. Yep.
Oh, cool, cool. So that's the basic of that, and from there I'll just kind of jump over to my NetBeans. Um, and an easy way to get this started, if you haven't already added a project, you want to add in Java Web a Java Web application, and we'll just leave it the default name. Put it wherever you're going to put it. Um, your server here, I know there's a lot of Tomcat ones out there. If you downloaded the NetBeans that already has Glassfish server included, it's already kind of pre-packaged for you, and that saves you some of the hassle setting up the environment. Make sure you have your right Java version selected in here, and it has to be the Enterprise Edition. Just hit Next. I didn't have to do anything for this part. You can integrate Hibernate or other pieces if you want to, and that creates your whole little package. So from there, I'm going to bounce over to mine just to show what I've already done. The main things you need to really mess with when you're first creating this is you need to create an index.html. That's just going to be inside your web pages. So find file, new HTML file, and I'll give you something really basic at first. Then in your source packages, under default package, if you right click and just go here, servlet should be one of your things. You can just create a new servlet. And when you create it, you'll get a very basic servlet that has some predefined like process, web page response, and like here's some do get and do post stuff that's very generic, just kind of fills it in so you can concentrate on the code that's on the inside of that. So that's what I had done to give myself a little jump start. Let's delete that before I commit it or set anything up. And last thing you need also is to mess with this web XML file. It should be pre-built if you did it this way, but if not, just add it in your web.inf. Maybe it's not, so new. No, don't do that. You right click new. And I think it's in here. Yeah, how to do other web.
I think it's in a
XML.
different folder, to be honest.
Okay, it's in the web standard deployment descriptor XML. So you add that thing. Didn't really have to do much when I added it initially, at least. And just for those that are following this, it would be helpful if, aside from my tutorial, you can also use these ones here. Either one of those are pretty handy. I followed this one a little more closely, just because it was a little easier to get past the environment. But both those were pretty handy. But anyway, so just to get some basics out of the way, I started personally just with having a little, okay, click here to try your first servlet page. And in the servlet, so this is the HTML file. It's just in the body, a little click here. The servlet file, I've got a very base. This is handled by this process request. So whenever someone just clicks on a link, it's handled by this process request method, and it's going to do whatever's inside here. So if I actually run this, and I'll go through it piece by piece, go back over here, run the project. So that's this first one up here. Here's my demo first page. So if I click on it, you'll see servlet, my servlet at first servlet. And that's because in here, it has it try to use this printer writer out with the response get writer. So it's using that to figure out, well, I can't describe that in very much detail. So if you have anything on that, go for it. But that click is handled by this process request. And so the request comes in, and as a response, it's using that response and says, okay, go get the writer. And here's where it says out. So you just send out, here's a web page. If you're familiar with HTML, you should be familiar with that. And here's what it is, servlet, my servlet at request get context path. So that's why you saw that right here. So that's a very, very basic one. And similar would happen if I have this, other one right here. Before this, any of this would work. If you tried it right now, it probably wouldn't work if you hadn't touched this web XML. Here, you basically do kind of like your mapping, similar to your Hibernate mapping table. First, you identify the servlet. So I call this hello. Your class, your servlet class has to be identified here. That's my servlet. So that's the class. Servlet name, gave it hello. Don't ask me why. That's just what the little thing wanted to do, is just part of the tutorial. In the mapping, though, you got to make sure your URL pattern is accurate. It has to match up with, I think it was right here, the href hello. So if you have a link, that hello, that link that you're pointing to, has to match this /hello. That's the relative path. And I just kept those the same with the hello there as the href. I don't know if that has to be exactly the same. I didn't try making it different yet. Did you try that at all, Robbie?
Oh, I'd have to go and look. I can't remember.
Okay, I just thought I'd check. So I kept those the same, but I know for sure this URL pattern has to match up. If I tried it with something different, and it just totally failed. So back to there's the href. So I tried it again with the check just to kind of see, well, I've got this other check button link, and I had to add in another servlet name check. I have the same servlet class, but I've got a different path here. So if I go here and you actually watch carefully, when I click on this first one, I get that /hello. It actually adds it to my relative path. If I click on this check page, it adds that check one. So that's all interlinked and how it kind of works a little. And then I wanted to mess with, because we need to actually send and use data and then use that to create a customized web page. So the easiest way to do that is with a form. Might be the only way to really do that because you need input from the user. So in my index.html, I got my own little form from another project I had done. And this form just says, give me your first name, your last name, age and stuff. And some of these are required, some of them aren't. And a little submit button at the bottom. And just like with the other parts, where this one I've got a form, so I need to add a part of the servlet mapping in here. So I give this servlet name sign up. In the form, the submit button name. Wait, no, is it name? Sorry, not name.
Could be in your form action.
Yeah, the form action. The action is sign up. So the action has to be sign up. to match that up there, and then sign up. That's my sign up URL. So there's all that. And here's the myServlet class. So it uses this myServlet. I used in my form the post method. And so in here, I messed with the original post method, and it's almost all my code at this point. But your HTTP, your request and response is pretty much the only thing that's really consistent. And of course, you throw these errors. So all that got filled in when I created the web project in NetBeans. And here, I check and see. So first, I have to set up my content type. Say it's a HTML. That was already included. And then there's the out response get writer. That's pretty consistent. Here's where things got a little bit different. I had to customize it. So you use a string, give it whatever object name you want to get the request and see what button got clicked. You would use this potentially. You have multiple buttons or multiple forms that they have to submit, and so you have to check and see which one got submitted. So in here, the sign up submit gets linked based on the name of the button. So I have sign up submit as my button name, and you can use that to help identify different buttons when you create this. So if I go there, so I have it pull in, and if it doesn't have anything, if that button was not clicked, the value is null. So that's why I have right here, I check and see which button is pressed and see if it's null or not null. If I go back over to this page, you'll see I've got multiple submit buttons. So I do this thing and hit submit. I'm just going to get welcome my name. And I needed to identify if I'm clicking this submit button or not. Don't want to do that. Don't want to do that. Close, close, close. Too many buttons. Sorry about that. Okay. So that other page you saw, this little name submit, was handled by my else because it came in here. This still is a do post method that I had used, but this didn't pass. I didn't click on it, so it was null. So I skipped past my is. I hit the else, and for my other button, I just say else. Go and print this welcome user. But if I do fill out my form, then this will come back and it won't be null, and so it's going to go and do all this stuff. And so you can pass in your parameters. You use this get parameter, which I use up here, and you just specify the name of different values from your HTML. So here's my sign up name. Here's the agree name, a day, month. So that name is really critical when you're reading in multiple different values, or even just one to help you identify it. And so I ran in, okay, get first name, last name, and age, and I assigned those to my Java objects. They come in as strings, so you gotta make sure you use a parse int or something if you don't want a string. And I just did something simple. I said, okay, if my age is, not 18, it's like, hey, sorry, dude, but you're not actually old enough for this, but thanks for your interest. And else it's like, oh, okay, you're old enough. Thank you for applying and enrolling and blah, 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 blah. So if I go back over here, I need to fill in, I don't know, Bob Jones. We'll just give it some name. Need some random password. And my age. I didn't put a filter on for negative, so we're going to play with that. If there's a real website, do it better than this. And agree. Those are the only ones that I required. The other ones I'm just going to leave blank and hit submit. And there we go. Thank you for your interest. Sadly, you must be 18 years old. And you said you're only -9. So I pulled that. I was able to use that to say, hey, you're not at least 18 years old, and get this custom response that you're not old enough. I went back and said I was 200 years old, which I do not want to live to be that old unless I'm like, I don't know, in a perfect body or something. And I need another password. Submit. It's like, hey, thanks for enrolling. You're going to get some job somewhere. Woohoo! So that's my demo. Would you like to add anything, Robbie?
The only thing I would look at here is where he had me do some correction is I needed to manipulate the data in some fashion and then
Okay.
do that as an output.
Okay.
So maybe what I would do is maybe take the age that they put in and
Hmm.
subtract it from your 18 or whatever, and just say if they're under,
Hmm.
like, oh, you still need to wait 5 more years until you can sign up or something like that.
Okay. Okay.
So
I
that's
might add that then.
just a thought. Other than that, yeah, everything else looked pretty good.
Cool.
I didn't do the thing with multiple submits. That's interesting. I just had it submit the form, so I
Hmm.
didn't do anything with the buttons. So the way that the form action pushed it as soon as I hit submit, like the button inside the form,
Hmm.
which it looks like you do have one right there.
Yeah,
That
I've got a
pushed
couple of
it.
those.
Oh yeah. So I don't know if you need. Well, yeah, I don't know if you actually need the button thing if you have it inside of a form.
Well, it is in a form. See this?
Yeah.
So the reason I wouldn't technically need that button name to submit it, like it would function, but
You had
I need
multiple.
a way to check and see which button got clicked if I wanted to use my custom response.
So I only had one in there, so I guess it didn't matter. It
Yeah,
was only one coming in
yeah,
anyway.
yeah. It's because I use post for all of these.
And
So
yeah, and I
like,
used to get, so that might be the other
yeah,
difference.
I think get would have been the same. I don't know.
Yeah.
The main reason why is because I want to do all the stuff, and this get name and age and stuff would all fail if they had just clicked on that first link of here's the user.
Right, right.
So I needed a way to test against making sure I don't throw this in there when they didn't supply me the
No, that
information in
makes
the
sense.
first place.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's why I had to grab a way of saying, okay, let's find a way to do this. And that's just one method I found. There was a couple other suggestions, but
Cool.
just checking if it was null was a pretty simple way with the
Oh no,
name.
totally. That makes sense.
So yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah.
can do math right there, right
If you
there.
have multiple buttons that do the same thing, then yeah, you wouldn't need to know which one's which.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But,
Cool.
yep, good
Now, how
point
do
though.
we hook
Thank you.
it up to hibernate? That's the real question.
I think at that point you'd have to make sure you click the Hibernate button when you start this, or at least add a Hibernate file, and then probably a Hibernate XML file, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I'm gonna play around with that here soon. That's part of the project. So
Yeah, you have to get everything integrated. Cool, cool.
yeah, good
I'll
stuff.
probably add a piece of that, but thank you for your feedback.
Yeah. Should I go ahead and stop the broadcast?
I guess, unless you have something else you want to share.
I'm gonna stop it here.